Welcome on in, WIP Daily. Joe Giglio with you. Appreciate everyone listening, subscribing, following the podcast. Goes to our YouTube feed, 94 WIP. Check it out there as the fallout from the Sixers' end of the season continues. Daryl Morey spoke yesterday. Really wanted to turn the page quickly to the offseason. And the theme was very clear. Very clear. They are star hunting. I feel like we're back in the time where Brett Brown was running the team. They're star hunting this offseason. They want to use that cap space on the best player possible this offseason. And there's a variety of names out there that we'll discuss, I'm sure, on this show and on WIP a lot over the next month or so. One of those names, ironically, almost simultaneously was being discussed down in Miami. Pat Riley had his end-of-season press conference, totally different tone. I mean, you listen to those two, Morey and Riley, speak for like 10 minutes. You're like, I understand why one guy has a culture wherever he goes, and the other guy's culture is not quite as good. But the one thing that you notice from Pat Riley is he did not hold back on some criticism of Jimmy Butler. Now, he praised Jimmy Butler for being a great player, but he also mentioned how he's basically a part-time player now. And if he played more, maybe the team wouldn't be in the play-in every year. And then basically told him to shut up because he was saying if he was playing, the Heat would have beaten the Knicks or the Sixers or whatever. So there was some, people, the takeaway was, are the Heat and Jimmy Butler on shaky ground? And they certainly might be. And if I'm the Miami Heat, I have reservations about giving Butler an extension when he still has time on his contract left. So that all opens up this can of worms. And it's gotten everyone here wondering, could Jimmy Butler come back to the Sixers? Should the Sixers pursue Jimmy Butler? I think it's a very complicated and kind of weird situation where on the surface, 1,000% yes, right? That the Sixers made a mistake 5 years ago. And they can reverse that mistake now, and they can bring Jimmy Butler back if the marriage between Butler and the Heat is about to die. But then you factor in compensation, you factor in the contract, a possible extension. Is it really the right move for the Sixers? Let me start with this. I was wrong on Jimmy Butler 5 years ago. I have admitted that many times over the past couple of years. I read it wrong. I thought Butler was a guy who wouldn't age well. He did age well. I thought he was a guy who would look like he does maybe now and is good for the next 3 or 4 years. I thought he would do that 4 or 5 years ago. He didn't. He had a lot more runway than I thought he did, and obviously bought into the culture down there in Miami and led them to 2 finals. What a tremendous signing for them, and what a major mistake for the Sixers not bringing him back in 2019. But now we're not living in 2019. We're living in 2024. And is it worth it for the Sixers? So let's attack this from a couple angles. We'll get Tucker's thoughts on this. The first angle is the player, his profile, what he brings to the table. And it's very difficult to say anything, but yeah, of course, the Sixers would be better with Jimmy Butler. Go get Jimmy Butler. Like, he provides toughness. He provides scoring. He provides rebounding. He provides playmaking. He has been a big game player. He has been a leader. Everything the Sixers have lacked, Jimmy Butler brings to the table. Yes, he would make them a better basketball team. If we take away all the other elements and we just talk about Jimmy Butler, the player, and next season, like, we go back to the old Tobias Harris over me. Imagine taking out Tobias Harris and putting in Jimmy Butler. The Sixers beat the Knicks. The Sixers are favored to beat the Pacers. And the Sixers likely are given a real chance to compete with the Boston Celtics in an Eastern Conference final. That's the kind of transformational player Butler could be if he came back here to Philadelphia. He checks every box that the Sixers are missing. Toughness, defense, rebounding, third scorer, everything the Sixers are missing. Jimmy Butler checks that box right now. And he checked it 5 years ago. They made a mistake, and he could check it again now. So if we take out any other consideration, it is an easy yes. Like, the first, like, do you want the player? Do you like the player? Does the player fit? Yes, 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 yes. And you go back to the history, Daryl Morey, he's tried to get every star, but he had interest in Jimmy Butler when he was younger on the Wolves back when Morey was in Houston. So there's an element to this makes total sense. And actually, from a basketball perspective, and we'll get to the contract stuff, the age stuff, all that stuff. But from a basketball perspective, I was trying to think of a comp this morning. Like, if they brought Butler back and you have Butler on this team with Maxey and with Joel Embiid, the basketball equivalent that I thought of this morning that I think they could look like in a free-flowing Nick Nurse offense is a modern version of the Spurs with Parker, Ginobili, and Duncan. Obviously, Embiid as the Duncan, as the big guy that could shoot a little bit from mid-range and beyond. Obviously, Duncan didn't shoot threes as much, but mid-range and beyond, skilled offensive player. He has gotten better as a passer. Duncan was an incredible passer, passing out of double teams, hitting his open guy. Joel functioning as the Duncan in the offense. Tyrese Maxey, I've heard Daryl Morey in recent years comp him to Tony Parker, like when they've kind of looked at the start of his career and what he's become, how quickly he's become it. There's some comparisons to Tony Parker. And then I look at Jimmy Butler, and you would say, well, Joe, he's better than Manu Ginobili. First of all, Manu's going to go to the Hall of Fame. Manu's a champion. And Manu, I think, could have scored more early in his career if he was on a different team. He just was with all these Hall of Famers on a dynasty, and he kind of took a step back and scored when it was his turn. But I look at Jimmy could be the Manu Ginobili of the group. And as he ages, and maybe Jimmy isn't the player 2 years from now as he is today or was last year or the year before, maybe he settles into that role where he's more of, if he came here with Maxey as more of a lead scorer and Embiid as more of a lead scorer, maybe Jimmy as a Manu type in this potential new trio could work. I mean, those guys sacrificed for each other. Now, is Jimmy and Embiid and Maxey willing to do that? I don't know. I mean, they got to figure that out. If we could watch guys like Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade take a step back for LeBron James, I mean, to me, anybody, and LeBron take a step back too, anybody could sacrifice. Kevin Durant went to Golden State. If you want to win a championship, you do what it takes to win a championship. So in a perfect world, I see them playing the game with Nick Nurse as their coach, like Pop used to play with Duncan and Ginobili and Parker. I think the three of them fit that. They look like that to me, maybe kind of a souped up version of those guys. You know, a little bit more of a physical dominant player in Joel than Duncan was. You know, a little bit more of a stronger and more athletic point guard than Parker was. But the speed there, Parker and Maxey, both very fast point guards. And obviously, Butler, a souped up version of Ginobili, though Butler, again, is aging a little bit now. All right, so that's the way I think it would look. As far as Butler, the player, you do worry about age, and he is a part-time player at this point. I mean, Jimmy Butler hasn't played 70 games in a season since 2017. He dropped to 60 this year. So we're trending towards, you know, he's not playing. You know, it's like Joel Embiid. So I think the hope would be, all right, maybe they stagger their time off, and then there's always someone really good on the court when the other guy's hurt or whatever. That's more hopeful than it is accurate. I mean, I don't know. How do we know when Jimmy Butler's going to get hurt? Like, he got hurt in the playing game against the Sixers. We don't know. You kind of hope it staggers itself. So always there's one of them out there with Tyrese Maxey during the regular season. But there's questions with his injuries now. There's questions with just being able to get through regular seasons, how that affects playoff seeding. Look at the Lakers the last couple of years. I mean, that's been an issue for them, where they've had Anthony Davis and LeBron James, great players, but they're fragile, and they don't really take the regular season seriously, and then they try to turn it on in the playoffs, and they've been matched up against the Nuggets 2 years ago and got smacked. So you can't just like say, oh, we'll turn it on in the playoffs. That's a concern. Jimmy Butler will be 35 when next season starts. That's a concern. And then you go to the contract. I'm going to pull this up here. The Jimmy Butler contract. It is not cheap, and he wants an extension. So, you know, I think we're at the point now where no matter who they bring in, it's going to cost a lot of money. It's going to cost most of their cap space to sign the player they sign or trade for the player they trade for, you know, whatever they use, however they use their money. So Butler is on, you know, he's got 2 years left on a 3-year, $146.4 million contract. So we're talking about, you know, over $40 million per season, and wants an extension, I'm guessing, over $50 million per season. So, you know, we're talking about the next 2 years at over 40. And yeah, he wants an extension, according to Miami Herald, of 2 years, $113 million. So you kind of do the math on this. This would be what, about 4 years and about over $200 million in terms of the what the contract would look like if they traded for him and gave him the extension. The final couple of years of that could be super ugly, super ugly. And then you throw in what it would take to get him. Now, here's where I become super intrigued by all this. Because of everything we just lined out with the age, with how much he plays, with the Heat maybe being a little bit, I'm not saying done with him, but maybe he's on Pat Riley's nerves. I'm not sure the market for Jimmy Butler is going to be as robust as we think. I don't, you know, the Sixers don't have players to trade. They have cap space to absorb him, and they have picks to trade. And Miami could reroute those picks, could be a three-way deal, whatever. But I'm not sure that Jimmy Butler at this stage of his career is going to cost as much of a trade as you might think. I mean, Sixers are the 16th pick of the draft. They have a bunch of future picks. Would they have to empty the cupboard for Jimmy Butler? I don't think they would. And if the Heat are done with him and he wants to come back here, even though there's the age red flag and even though there's the games played red flag, I have to do it because, and I know the contract coming up becomes another consideration, but I'll worry about that. Like I'll figure that out when I get there. I would take Jimmy Butler back. Tucker, I know it comes with some risk and he's not getting any younger and he's not playing a lot of games per season. But if it doesn't cost much and he wants to come back here, I think the basketball fit is as good as you can imagine to bring Jimmy Butler back here. And unlike Paul George or some other guys, I know he's a winner. Like I know he won't cower when he gets to Philadelphia.
Yeah, he'll play well in the postseason, right? The first 82 games are the issue with Jimmy Butler, which is kind of the opposite of Paul George. And is Jimmy Butler the perfect player? No, but guess what? Perfect superstars aren't ever available. Right, if you're holding out for a superstar without baggage or who's in his 20s, you're going to be waiting a while. No one's gonna become available in that situation. To me, it just as much as it makes sense, and I think Jimmy Butler would fit well on this team, it just makes me sad. Like we wasted this guy's entire prime basically by letting him walk to Miami, and maybe he wouldn't have come here. And I think there is a lot of revisionist history as to what Jimmy Butler was when he was here compared to what he's become now. I think he's, become a lot more mature in his time in Miami. And remember, he had lots of issues with Brett Brown. Remember, he didn't take a three for a month just because he didn't feel like it. Just a lot of little weird things that we tend to forget about Jimmy Butler. But I just, when you talk about what Daryl Morey wants, he laid it out yesterday, right? They need a wing player who can step up and play big in the postseason. That's Jimmy Butler in a nutshell, right? Like when he goes in the Hall of Fame, I know they don't have plaques at the Pro Basketball Hall of Fame, but if they did, that's what it would say. Elite scoring wing who performed well in the postseason.
It would. I mean, that's who he is. It's who he's been for a long time. And if he comes back here, I think the fit would work. And I think Tucker made a great point there that there are no perfect superstars. Like Anthony, great players in their 20s are not available. Anthony Edwards is not available. Like you can't get him. You could call the Wolves tomorrow and say, we'll give you every pick swap we have for the next 50 years. And they're going to say, no, we got the next great player in the NBA. So great young players that check every box are not available. Jimmy Butler doesn't check every box. I agree with Tucker. He has matured a little bit since he left here. I think the time with Spoelstra down in Miami and Pat Riley has helped him a lot. And it's changed, a lot of the way he has been. And it's risky. Paul George is risky, but Paul George has been more of a loser. Jimmy Butler's been more of a winner. LeBron James is the pie in the sky idea. We'll get to that, I'm sure, in an episode soon. The likelihood is he won't come here. I mean, that I find it probably harder to imagine anything else than LeBron James actually signs in Philadelphia. So of the available options, Jimmy Butler becomes attractive. He becomes attractive. The only thing that holds me back is what do the Heat know or what do the Heat think that's telling them he's not worth the extension? When Pat Riley and company want to move off a player, I wonder, why do they want to move off this player? What do they see day to day, week to week, game to game that maybe we're missing? That's my biggest trepidation on this. It's not his age and it's not his game. And in fact, Jimmy Butler this year shot from three at 41%, best of his career. I think that he needs that as he ages because his ability to get by people is going to wane and diminish, and they will actually keep him healthier. LeBron this year shot the three ball the best he ever has. I think as you get into your 30s, late 30s, you got to shoot the three ball if you're a player that used to go to the basket. You're not going to be able to get to the basket as much, and when you do, you're going to get banged up more often. So I like that about where Butler's game is going now. If you tell me this costs all the Sixers assets and an extension, I'm probably out. That feels like a lot for an aging player. But I don't think it will cost as much as you might. And a lot of people might. And if the trade feels like, man, they got Jimmy Butler for that, not that much, I think it is a seamless fit. It can work here. I see that old Spurs kind of thing with the way I see the three of them playing between Duncan and Manu and Parker. That could be here with Embiid and Maxey and Jimmy Butler. It would be in a way, a depressing story because they missed out in the last 5 years, but it'd be righting a wrong. Sometimes you got to right the wrong. And the Sixers here could right the wrong, bring Jimmy Butler back, get him out of Miami, appease him with a couple extra years on the contract, and cross your fingers that it's enough to make a deep run next year in the Eastern Conference. I'm in. Bring Jimmy Butler back. Appreciate everyone listening, subscribing, following WIP Daily. We'll talk soon.